I don't know if you had to go on history trips when you were at school, but when I was a lad they weren't very exciting. We'd dress up as urchins at the Black Country Museum or go and look at a canal boat or something. History trips as an adult though are much more exciting, especially when they involve all of Honda's NSXs. We are in France at the Reims GP circuit, which from 1926 to 1972 was the site of a lot of motor racing. Multiple F1 champions won races here, from Juan Manuel Fangio to Jackie Stewart, and although it's been disused for almost 50 years, much of the infrastructure is still here. The legacy lives on. It seems a fitting place then to delve into the history books of one of Honda's most iconic race cars for the road. 2019 marks 30 years since the NSX was first shown at the Chicago Motor Show. And since then, it's proved to be a revelation. This is the car that the world saw when Honda first peeled back the covers. The NSX was conceived not as a rival to Toyota or Volkswagen or any of the rivals that you might traditionally associate Honda with. No, the big chiefs in Japan wanted to take on Ferrari. They wanted to create a rival to Ferrari's V8 powered sports cars, the 328 GTB and the 348 GTB. But they wanted to do it with a V6. It had to match or beat the performance of the Italian cars, and it had to be more reliable. So Honda threw lots of resources at it. It was the first car made almost entirely from aluminium, with a mid-mounted aluminium V6, 3 litres, around 275 horsepower. Honda was big into its motorsport at the time and wanted to show off its prowess, so it got McLaren Honda F1 driver Ayrton Senna to help develop the handling. The looks were inspired by the canopy of an F-16 jet fighter.
One of the best things about Reims is that even though it's public roads, you can still drive pretty much the entire track. So let's take the NSX out and see what it's like, and see if I can get a sense of what it must have been like to race here. So you come down this massively fast straight past the start-finish line, and then now there's a roundabout, but previously this was presumably a pretty fast right, down towards Muison. This is a much sharper right-hander, down towards is now a roundabout again, which will take us onto what is now a dual carriageway. But back then would have been another, presumably quite tight right-hander, and then powering out onto the long straight. Coming down now into the last corner. Another fairly tight right-hander. Oh, it's weighty. And then bam, on the power. Again, the NSX pickup, this is the automatic car. Oh. At low ends, it's not got much, but once it gets up above 5,000 RPM and the VTEC kicks in, it really, really pulls, and it keeps pulling as well, more than I'm prepared to let it pull on a public road, in case the gendarmes are around. Here we come, down towards the start-finish straight again. I can see the grandstands and the towers and the French flag flying. To finish a lap. Today, a car is usually replaced by the manufacturer every 5 years or so. But the first NSX had been on sale for a stonking 13 years before Honda decided to give it a facelift. Apart from a larger 3.2 litre engine, it was basically the same in the early 2000s as it had been in 1990. But in 2002, they freshened it up.
And here's the result. As you can see, the headlights are different, the rear tyres are slightly wider, the spring rates on the suspension have been slightly changed, and that's about it. But if you're onto a good thing, why change it?
Perhaps they should have done something about the interior, which is pretty much unchanged from the Mark I. The NSX's exterior looks have aged very well, but this interior makes a Dacia look posh. The seating position isn't actually that great for a sports car. Maybe it was designed for slightly shorter people than me, I'm just a shade under 6 foot, but the seat doesn't go low enough, there's not enough headroom, the steering wheel doesn't adjust enough. I feel like I'm lying down with my arms out straight. So, moving from the Mark I into the Mark II, feels like it shouldn't be too much different because the interior is virtually the same, apart from the fact that I've got a manual gearbox now. But it feels so different. So first of all, you've got a different engine. Instead of the 3 litre, you've got a 3.2, although the power is around about the same. But it feels like it pulls much better. The noise is better, even though apparently the exhaust is the same. And the steering feels really different. The steering in the first one's really heavy, you have to get your shoulders involved. Whereas this one, it feels much lighter, much more sprightly. The whole thing feels like it's up on its toes a bit more. I love the looks of the first one,
but the way that this one drives is the one that I'm a big fan of. So, what makes the NSX an iconic sports car? Well, we asked you lot via our social media pages, and the response was interesting. Reims Stephen simply posted a GIF of Senna. Luke Thorpe said what he said and then put an upwards arrow. And Philip Ludgate said Senna! Luke Baird said incredible handling. Thanks, Ayrton. So it seems like the involvement of what many say is the greatest F1 driver that's ever lived is a major factor in achieving iconic status. The trouble is, Ayrton Senna died in 1994, meaning that he wouldn't be around for any future development work. Honda stopped production of the NSX in 2005, but the problem with having an iconic car in your history is that you'll be forever fending off questions about when you're going to bring it back. There was an announcement about a V10 powered car in 2007, but by 2008 the economy had had something of a wobble and that project was canned. But the demand was still there, and where there's demand, there's money. So in 2016, Honda whipped the covers off an all-new NSX. Boom! The latest NSX shares much with the original car, in that it has a mid-mounted V6, the same name. Actually, that's about it. So, inside the Mark III, and what a difference. Finally, they've updated the interior. I've got headroom, I've got a good driving position, I've got all mod cons, I've got good build quality. Things that are the same, there's not many places to put stuff. So for a road trip car, there's even less space. In fact, the boot is even smaller. Overall, it's much comfier in here, but the question is, how does it drive? The Mark III NSX shares basically nothing with the original car, and the same is true of the driving experience. The hybrid system means that around town it's pretty much silent in electric-only mode. But turn this big round knob to Sport Plus mode, and it becomes an absolute monster! It's so quick, so fast, and so sharp. They touted the original NSX as a race car for the road, but when it's all turned up, this just feels like a race car that somebody's put on the road by mistake. So, it's certainly very technically capable, and it's ludicrously fast. But is the new NSX really a spiritual successor to the original? Well, I'm not sure. It doesn't have the Senna connection that romanticises that particular story, and it's not as involving to drive in a purely analogue way. But it is tremendous, and if nothing else, that should ensure that it stays remembered for a very long time.